Welcome back. Well, confidence in South Africa's residential property market is holding steady. Absa's latest Homeowners Sentiment Index reveals that 84% of South Africans still view property as a good investment, driven by its long-term value and hopes of economic recovery. Kamini Ramsamy, head of credit risk for home loans at Absa, joins us now to unpack the report. Thank you so much for your time, Kamini. Now, the first thing that jumped out at me is that according to the HSI, 84% of South Africans still view property as a good investment. I mean, many homeowners that I speak to actually complain about the costs that come with owning a property. So just contextualize that return versus the cost of owning a property.
Yes, Zanati, look, property prices rise in the future, which creates capital gains for consumers. So owning a property is a path to long-term financial security, through rental income or through, equity growth. It also reduces household expenses over the long term versus rent. I think we all know that rent money is dead money. I also think that COVID did make home ownership a lot more desirable and secure for a lot of consumers. And what we're finding is that younger people are now turning to owning properties. Younger buyers are, they're more financially savvy, they're digitally empowered, and they're very much motivated by stability investment that property purchasing provides you.
I will say that for me, one of my biggest stresses about renting is having to move every year or 2 years. So a lot of admin on that front. It would be good to have a property that I can just stay in where I know that that is my home. And I mean, just, that view of property being a good investment, for what purposes are people actually buying property to live in or to rent out or to Airbnb?
So what we're finding is that rent is rising faster than salaries. And buying properties seems more practical in the long term. Renting out may seem cheaper in the short term, but buying becomes a lot more cost effective, over 5-10 years. With Airbnb, people who stay in Airbnb, if you think about it, it's quite expensive to stay in an Airbnb, and it also becomes very impractical over the long term to stay in Airbnb. But if you own a property for Airbnb purposes, it generates a lot more monthly income than long-term rentals. We find that, your coastal areas, your towns that attract tourists, they do very well with Airbnb. However, there's a seasonal demand to it. But buying is doing well. I think we're seeing that pick up year on year. We're definitely seeing a lot more activity in the buying market.
Yeah. You also mentioned first-time home buyers, and that's also always a very interesting category. What trends are playing out there?
First-time home buyers are quite interesting. So year on year, we're seeing first-time buyers becoming a lot more active in the market. 2 years ago, at the end of 2021, going into 2022, when rates started picking up, first-time home buyers, your lower income customers started to, get out of the market. They were very active during COVID. But now we're starting to see them gradually come back in the market, which is a good sign. We're also seeing a lot of younger first-time home buyers. The average first-time home buyer age is around 36, which is good. A lot of the first-time buyers do see property as a good investment. So it's a very positive sign in terms of recovery in the market.
All right. Yeah. And that's exactly my age. So there's a nudge there for me as well. I mean, you talk about this rise in consumer confidence and this buying activity and appetite. But has the supply of credit actually opened up to match that demand?
Look, there are a few signs. I think the first-time home buyer is one of them. We're seeing appetite increase there in terms of buying. The homeowner sentiment that we're discussing today, I think it's quite positive to see that it is still remaining quite high. So how consumers feel about, owning properties, renting out properties, investing in properties, those sentiments around home ownership remains high, which is positive. Credit supply has improved, but selectively. In terms of banks' acceptance rates, it has improved post the pandemic, lows that we have experienced. And the mortgage growth still seems to be very much skewed towards higher earners. Banks' non-performing loans is gradually improving.
Yeah.
So over time, you will see, better arrears performance in the market, and you'll see more room for lending expansion. So it is gradually improving, but some positive signs that we are seeing.
Well, I mean, there's that 16% of consumers that is not optimistic on a property as an investment. What is holding that portion of consumers back?
Affordability still remains very much a hurdle for these consumers that you're talking about.
Yeah.
And also the upfront costs that's associated with buying a property. Even though the interest rates have come down, and yesterday we had some very good news,
Yeah.
these consumers still face inflationary pressure, from living expenses. I'm talking about your municipal rates,
Yes.
your levies, your water, your fuel. So they're still facing inflationary pressure here. So affordability for them still remains a bit fragile. Also, the responsibility of owning a home and not having the flexibility to move. They still see property prices quite high in the market, especially in the coastal areas. We're finding that consumers still prefer renting there. So all of that is playing a part, but mainly it revolves around affordability still remaining a challenge for these consumers.
And as you talk about flexibility to move, I mean, during the thick of COVID, the concept of semigration gained momentum, particularly out of Gauteng and into coastal areas like the Western Cape. Is it still looking like that? And does this mean that the property market in Gauteng is maybe a little bit shaky?
It's good that you raise that. So what we've actually seen, over the past 18 months, there's been a lot of semigration, to the coastal areas.
Yes.
So semigration in the sense that customers are selling up their properties in a specific region, and we're finding a lot of that in Gauteng, and they're purchasing in the coastal areas, particularly in the Western Cape.
Yeah.
Where we're seeing a lot of semigration there, and the house prices are doing very well in the Western Cape as a result. Gauteng is seeing a lot of negative semigration, but the homeowner sentiment in Gauteng still remains high. I also think that Gauteng is, the country's largest housing market.
Okay.
It's where the largest housing market lies. And the province, seems to suffer from any disruptions in, in service. So I'm talking like, your delays in your property transfers, your municipality clearance processes.
Yeah.
Where you have any disruptions there, the province does suffer. But overall, the annual price inflation in Gauteng is still increasing modestly. It's not even across the region. We see areas like Swane doing very well in Gauteng, and other areas, remain quite sluggish.
All right. Well, we do have to wrap up the conversation there, but thank you so much for those valuable insights, Kamini. Really appreciate your time. That was Kamini Ramsamy, Head of Credit Risk for Home Loans at Absa.